Okay, I've gone through your paragraph, and here it is, arranged with grammatical corrections and proper punctuation. You wake up. No buzz, no plans, no notifications lighting up your screen. Just stillness. Just you. That quiet feels strange, almost too quiet. And then it hits. That whisper of doubt. That pressure in your chest. That ache. Not for company, but for proof that you matter to someone. That's the moment most men bolt. They reach for their phones. They text someone they shouldn't. They scroll through distractions just to feel connected, because society told you that silence means something's wrong. That if no woman's texting, if no friend's calling, then maybe you're behind, maybe you're undesirable, maybe you're failing. But what if the silence isn't a punishment? What if it's a door? A door most men are too afraid to walk through. See, the world taught you to fear solitude, but no one told you what happens when you lean into it, when you stop chasing noise and finally face the quiet. Because here's the truth: the man who embraces his solitude, who walks alone by choice, is not weak. He's dangerous because he's building something no one sees, something internal, unshakable. This message isn't for every man. It's for the ones who are tired of being picked last, tired of performing for approval, tired of shrinking to fit places they've outgrown. It's for the man who's done running and ready to rise. In a world of loud opinions and desperate attention-seeking, the man who chooses stillness becomes unforgettable. This isn't isolation, it's reclamation. You're not escaping the world. You're returning to yourself. Too many men drift from woman to woman, from job to job, from one shallow friendship to the next, chasing validation like oxygen. But when do you stop and ask, what happens if I stop chasing and just sit with myself? What happens is transformation. Your mind sharpens, your voice deepens, your standards rise. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing others to see your worth, that's when they finally notice. Before we dive in, I want you to write one thing in the comments. I choose solitude to forge my strength. Not because it sounds good, but because you're done hiding, because you're ready to stop chasing and start becoming. This is your line in the sand. Type it, own it, and let's begin. Number 1, the fear of silence. You sit in the dark, and for once there's no escape, no alerts, no plans, no one asking for your time, just the sound of your breath and something heavier underneath it. Your thoughts. Most men don't fear being alone. They fear what aloneness reveals. Not the absence of people, but the presence of truth. Silence isn't empty. It's confronting. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shame you. It just opens the vault. The regrets you buried, the choices you postponed, the versions of yourself you promised to become but never did. Suddenly they all show up, uninvited, unfiltered. That girl who disappeared, that job you didn't apply for, that promise you broke to yourself when no one else was watching. You try to look away, but there's nothing to distract you anymore. No conversation to hide in, no relationship to drown in, no performance to act out, just you and the truth you've been avoiding for years. And now comes the real question. Will you finally face it or run again? That's why most men stay moving, jumping from woman to woman, goal to goal, screen to screen. Not to build something, but to escape something. Not her, not them, but themselves, because silence strips the mask. And when it does, you either shatter or awaken. At first, the silence is brutal. It pulls your chest tight. It echoes every insecurity louder than any voice. You're not enough. You'll always be forgotten. Nothing you do really matters. But if you stay, if you breathe through the chaos, if you stop trying to run from it, something shifts. You begin to realize you're still here, still breathing, still capable. And those thoughts, they're not who you are. They're echoes, old scripts. They knock, but you don't have to open the door. That's when clarity comes quietly, without fireworks, just a still knowing. You are not your past, not your regrets, not the woman who left, not the man who failed once. You are the man who stayed, the one who didn't flinch, who sat in his own fire and refused to look away. That's rare. That's power. That's stoic. Growth doesn't begin at the gym, not in books, not in podcasts or self-help reels. It begins in stillness. It begins the moment you decide you're worth facing. You sit in the storm. Let it scream. Let it twist. Let it tear through every illusion. And you stay. You don't fill the void. You let it exist. And in doing so, you reclaim what most men never touch: inner command. From that silence, a new voice rises, not loud, but steady, not perfect, but real. And when you move again, you move with weight. Your words hit deeper. Your presence feels centered, not because you've changed the world, but because you finally returned to yourself. And here's the truth. The world doesn't need more men who blend in. It needs men who can sit in silence and walk out with clarity, because that man, he doesn't chase. He doesn't prove. He doesn't beg to be seen. He becomes seen because his energy doesn't ask. It declares. Number 2, approval detox. Most men are addicted to something they can't see. Not alcohol, not drugs, not gambling, but something far more subtle: approval. They check their phones first thing in the morning, not because they need information, but because they need validation. Did she reply? Did they like my post? Did someone notice me? It seems harmless, but it's not. It's neediness disguised as connection, dependency wearing a smile. And what makes it so dangerous is that it's invisible. No one warns you. There's no rehab for it, no intervention. But it eats away at you slowly, because it doesn't just affect what you do. It rewires who you think you are. Approval seeking makes you shrink. You say yes when you want to scream no. You laugh at things you don't find funny. You avoid silence, avoid honesty, avoid standing alone just to avoid rejection. You think you're playing safe, but in truth, you're playing small. You're trading your voice for comfort, your identity for applause, your freedom for belonging. And over time, that need to be liked becomes a prison. You decorate the walls with compliments, but you know you're stuck, trapped in the image others built for you, not the man you were meant to become. Here's the truth. Approval is a high. It hits quick, then fades. And like all highs, it leaves you needing more attention, more validation, more performance. But eventually, you burn out. Not because you're weak, but because you've been wearing a mask for too long. And masks get heavy. But there's another path. It's not easy, but it's real. It begins with a detox, an approval detox. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. You stop shaping your opinions to match the room. You start asking harder questions. Am I doing this because I believe in it, or because I want to be liked? That question alone shifts everything. You stop chasing quick yeses. You stop apologizing for having standards. You stop explaining yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. At first, it feels like withdrawal. You feel the silence, the distance, the voices in your head asking, what if they don't like me anymore? But you sit in it. You breathe through it. You let the discomfort sharpen you. And slowly, a new voice appears. Not loud, not dramatic, but solid. Your voice. The one buried under years of performance. The one that speaks not to be heard, but because it must speak. And then comes the shift. You stop texting just to stay relevant. You stop laughing when it's not funny. You start honoring your time, your truth, your peace. People notice. They sense something different. A weight in your presence, a stillness in your eyes. You don't need attention. You carry attention. That's the paradox. When you stop trying to be seen, you become impossible to ignore because men who chase approval blend in, but men who choose themselves, they stand out, not by volume, but by alignment. You know what you believe. You know what you'll allow. And most of all, you know who you are when no one's watching. That's the kind of man people remember, not because he was loud, but because he was unshakable. Approval detox is messy. It costs you fake friends, surface-level smiles, temporary applause. But what you gain is everything. You gain respect, not demanded, but drawn. You gain peace, not from hiding, but from standing. And you gain power, not from control, but from clarity. So ask yourself, are you still living to be liked? Still adjusting who you are to make others comfortable? Or are you finally ready to choose yourself? Because once you do really do, something shifts. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop performing. You simply become, and the world watches. Number 3, clarity through solitude. There comes a moment in every man's life when the noise fades, and what's left is stillness. Not forced, not empty, just quiet. And in that silence, something powerful happens. For the first time in a long time, the fog lifts, not because the world changed, but because you stepped away from it. You turned down the volume on the expectations, the pressure, the constant opinions, and finally, you could hear what had been waiting underneath all along, yourself. Solitude is not isolation, it's restoration. It's the process of peeling back everything that isn't you so you can finally see what is in the chaos. You're reactive. You're rushed. You're adjusting, conforming, performing. You're constantly checking if you're doing it right by someone else's standard. But in solitude, you begin to slow down, to observe instead of react, to notice what you let into your mind, your time, your soul. You realize how much of your thinking never belonged to you. The goals weren't yours. The lifestyle wasn't yours. Even the idea of success was handed to you. And you've been chasing a version of life that never felt like home. But when you pull back, when the feed goes quiet, when the phone stays down, when the weekend isn't booked out, something new appears. Clarity. You begin to ask better questions. Not what do people expect of me, but what do I truly want? What energizes me? What depletes me? Who do I become around certain people? And do I like that man? Solitude lets you face those questions without noise, without pressure to answer quickly, without needing approval for your answers. You sit in it. You feel what's been buried. You breathe through what's uncomfortable. And slowly, the mirror clears. You stop pretending you're fine with things that don't feel right. You stop tolerating connections that feel hollow. You stop lying to yourself just to avoid discomfort. And you begin to live aligned. Not perfect, but real. Not polished, but honest. You start saying no without guilt. You create space not because you're distant, but because you're finally discerning. You begin to cut ties, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Solitude doesn't just clear your head, it sharpens your sight. You become intentional. You no longer wake up to survive the day. You wake up with direction. Your routines match your goals. Your circle reflects your values. Your environment becomes a mirror of who you are, not who you were trying to be. And something else shifts. You stop explaining your choices to people who will never understand them. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove. You simply live, and your life speaks for itself. That's when you realize you're no longer available for drama. You're no longer vulnerable to manipulation. You're no longer influenced by surface-level noise. You're rooted, and that rootedness makes you immovable. People can disagree with you, misunderstand you, even walk away. And still, you remain centered because now you're not living for them. You're living in alignment with the man you were meant to become. That's the real gift of solitude. It burns away distraction. It burns away noise. It burns away the versions of you that were never truly yours. And what's left is a man with peace in his chest and purpose in his stride. He doesn't speak to impress. He speaks because what he says matters. He doesn't chase. He builds. And he doesn't need to be understood because he finally understands himself. So if your world feels quiet right now, don't panic. That silence isn't emptiness. It's an invitation. It's your life asking you to slow down and listen. You don't need more attention. You don't need more likes, more replies, more women, or more noise. You need more stillness, more solitude, more moments where you sit alone and meet the man you've ignored for too long. Yourself. The man who walks alone isn't broken. He's rebuilding. He's not running from the world. He's returning to his center, refining, sharpening, burning away everything that never belonged to him. He doesn't move like someone waiting to be chosen. He moves like someone who has already chosen himself. And when you become that man, life begins to align. The right people stay, the wrong ones fade, and opportunity doesn't have to be chased anymore. It simply finds you. That's not magic. That's mastery. If this silence resonates with something deep inside you, don't just scroll. Drop a comment below and answer this. What's one distraction you're ready to let go of today? Then hit like. Not because you were entertained, but because something in you awakened. And subscribe to this channel if you're ready to build not noise, not popularity, but clarity, discipline, and quiet strength. Because here at the Stoic Spirit, we are not chasing approval. We're creating men who lead from the inside out.